This is Loyalty to Agency, Client, or Self, the 13th Ethical Dilemma in Appendix A of Ethical Decisions for Social Work Practice by Hannah Harrison and Jesse Gonzalez.
Loyalty to agency, client, or self. Description of problem. Mr. and Mrs. Altona Silfera requested couples counseling from an agency in their neighborhood because of the increasing miscommunication and arguments in their marriage. They saw an initial intake person who determined that their income requires a $90 fee per session, and they agreed to the fee arrangement. Afterward, they were assigned to a social worker, Hyacinth DeForma, who was trained to do couples counseling. After they began working with Miss DeForma, they told her the fee is proving to be more stressful for their family than they anticipated. Miss DeForma says, despite the agency's policy and fee schedule, that there may be a way to solve the financial problem. Because the agency has no written policy about seeing agency clients privately, she could see them privately in her part-time practice for a lower fee. Should she? Why or why not?
First, we want to explore Hyacinth's commitment to helping the clients. This first involves the ethical principle of service, where the social worker's primary goal is to help people in need. The second ethical principle is dignity and worth, where social workers respect the inherent dignity and worth of the person. Another ethical principle is recognizing the importance of human relationships. There is also involved the ethical standard of commitment to clients, and the ethical standard of interruption of services involves ensuring they can continue to get services should work with them.
Commitment to agency. Hyacinth also follows ethical principles for loyalty to her agency as well as integrity. Social workers must behave in a trustworthy manner. Ethical standards that should be considered are Hyacinth's respect for colleagues, her consultation with colleagues, and the standard of referral for services.
Hyacinth's commitment to her own self and livelihood. She has to respect her personal and professional boundaries. She also has to have her own self-determination in regards to which action she takes. She has a commitment to uphold her own integrity, and she still has a career and livelihood to uphold for the sake of herself.
Before a decision can be made, it is important to consider all sides to the story. As a social worker, it is important for us to explore the unknowns and how these can factor into the process of making the most ethical decision. Before making a decision, we would have liked to have had a better understanding of both the client, agency, and the therapist. Questions we would like to explore are: has the therapist consulted her supervisor? Is she going to inform her agency? Does she feel obligated to clients? Has she offered to find outside services that are less expensive? Is the agency in a rural or urban community? Is the agency the only provider in the area? What is the difference in fee going to be? What does the agency policy explicitly state? Has the social worker done this with other clients? What is her honest motivation? How many sessions has she seen the clients for? And how many sessions are left in the current treatment plan? Do the clients consider her the best clinician for them? Does she consider herself the only or best option for them? The client's knowledge and understanding of services and options, the access and availability of other agencies and services, whether or not the clients have children, and lastly, does the clinician possess some type of specialty that applies to the clients?
Next, we'd like to explore the various alternatives that the social worker can take, beginning with taking on clients in private practice at a reduced fee. Reasons that would contribute to making this decision include there being no specificity in agency policy against referring to oneself, the social worker's commitment to helping the client, whether she has consulted with her supervisor and colleagues and had a positive response in regards to this action, again, if there is no potential damage to her personal or professional integrity, if there are any congruent cultural factors or specialties she possesses that makes her the best option for treating the couple, if it is a commonly accepted and practical response to the situation. The potential harms include referring to yourself could be termed as unethical. You could lose respect from colleagues, other clients, and agency. You could potentially lose your job or your licensure, and the loss of personal and professional integrity.
Another alternative that can be taken to this ethical dilemma is that Hyacinth does not take the client on in private practice. The goods that can come from this are that Hyacinth protects personal and professional integrity, she fosters loyalty with her colleagues and agency, she's committed to a greater good of the agency and other clients, she maintains healthy professional boundaries with the clients, she avoids creating a conflict of interest, she maintains ethical standards and principles to referring clients and ensuring services, and lastly, she upholds agency policies. The harms that can come from this decision are that the clients lose the current relationship that they have formed with their therapist. The clients may not continue with therapy due to frustration after losing their therapist. The clients receive and create a negative schema in their brains about how therapy works in general. Also, the couple may give up on their marriage instead of finding a new resource.
An ethical relativist stance would make sense in deciding to take the clients on because it rejects any fixed moral rules and asserts that solutions to the problem are relative to the situation.
Clinical pragmatism in support of referring the client out can be applied as Hyacinth would be supporting the status quo of the agency and norms of the NASW. Also, through concentrating on improving practice, Hyacinth as a therapist will be able to refer out and make sure that no ethical problems or dilemmas may arise while resolving any potential value ethics that may be influenced.
Dynamic systems theory can aid in describing the situation and the circumstances of the social worker.
Through using dynamic systems theory, we can see how Hyacinth DeForma, the therapist, is autonomous in making her own decisions, yet has outer systems that influence how she goes about making these decisions. As the focal point, Hyacinth has subsystems that include her biological, emotional, spiritual, and cognitive traits, all of these which contribute to her autonomy and decision-making skills. However, she also has many supersystems that she transfers and receives energy from. These supersystems include her agency, clients, her affiliation with the NASW, her potential family, her colleagues, and her private practice. Although Hyacinth is an individual system herself, her system is part of a greater system, all which are interrelated and connect to one another.
In order to gain more insight into the dilemma, Hannah and I both consulted with our field supervisors.
I intern at The Haven, which is a residential treatment center for women, and am supervised by a licensed clinical social worker named Kevin Burt. When I asked Kevin this question, his response was, if I was in this situation in the city of Denver, I would not take the client on in private practice. The reason I would not do this is because referring yourself is unethical. In addition, when you refer yourself, you are taking away business from your agency. If I was in this situation, I would give the clients 3 to 5 references for other therapists not in the agency. I might include my outside practice, I might not. Even doing that, however, is a bit unclear when it comes to ethics. Lastly, it's important to note that my response is based off living in the city of Denver. It may get tricky deciding what to do if you lived in a more rural community such as Lyman, where you may be the only individual qualified for the job.
I consulted with Katie Lesh, my supervisor. She's an LPC and a lead clinician at Jefferson Center for Mental Health. She informed me that Jefferson Center has a strict policy against such activity. She also suggested referring the client to a list of sliding scale therapists and maybe including oneself on that list. She also reminded me to be aware of the power differential in a therapist-client relationship that may influence the couple's decision if they were only given the option to see her in private practice. In regards to who would be impacted by the decision, we focused on the client, but the actual culture and values that would come into play are still unknowns for the situation. Important aspects to note would be if the client and therapist share a common culture that would factor into where they would be referred. In addition to the ethical principles screen, where we looked at 3 principles to consider in resolving the dilemma. Ethical principle number 2, the principle of social justice applies in the manner of if all clients are being treated equally. Would all clients be offered equal opportunities as far as costs? Ethical principle 4, of least harm poses the question of which action would cause the least harm to the client as well as a social worker. Ethical principle 7, the principle of truthfulness and full disclosure entails that the therapist should discuss options and policy in full with the client.
After reading The Ethical Dilemma, weighing out both options, and consulting outside resources, Jesse and I have decided that if we were the therapist, we would not take on the clients in our private practice. We based our decision off of ethical principle number 2, social justice, as well as the ethical standards of integrity and respect. Before discussing any options with the clients, we would consult our supervisor to see if they first had any suggestions of what steps to take. In doing so, we would discuss other payment options with them and the agency to see if we could work on some sort of sliding scale to reduce the fee, allowing the clients to stay working with us as their therapists. Lastly, if an option between our supervisor and agency could not be reached, we would give references to our clients about other agencies and resources that would better serve them financially, as well as continue to provide them with the type of services they needed.
And finally, these are our references.